Hello everyone. So today let us try to identify how to develop your research topic. So this is mostly relevant to the students who are following their undergraduates in accounting and finance, as well as for the students who are following their MBAs and MScs, especially with regard to the area of accounting and finance. So most of the students are facing difficulties or struggling to identify their research topics due to various reasons. And let's sort out that matter by following the following easy steps. So the step one is simply you need to understand your broad area, because as an accounting and finance student, undergraduate or a postgraduate, you are learning many different subjects in the field of accounting and finance. So you're learning finance, and under accounting, you're learning financial accounting, management accounting, could be managerial accounting, auditing, taxation, and even forensic accounting. And even here, you are learning forensic auditing as well. So this is the broad area. So sometimes you are more interested in finance than accounting. On the other hand, you're more interested in accounting subjects than finance subjects. So thereby you need to identify your broad area. If you are more interested in finance, the broad area is finance. Then if you are more interested in accounting, you need to determine which category you are more interested in, whether it is financial accounting, management accounting, auditing, taxation, or forensic accounting. So that is how you need to identify your broad area at the very beginning. So the second step is to narrow down your interest. So simply you're narrow downing your broad area. So let's see how we could do that. So as I mentioned earlier, your broad area can either be from the finance or from accounting field in terms of financial management, auditing, taxation, and forensic. So once you have identified your broad area, you could remember that during your undergraduate period or during your masters, you are learning many topics in that particular broad area. For an example, if you preferred broad area is finance, you have learned many different topics under finance. So here you can see I have indicated few topics starting from working capital management to derivatives, and here it includes sustainable finance, fintech, digital finance, which means the cryptocurrency. Those are some of the newest areas. So sometimes the topics that you have done in your undergraduates as well as the postgraduate. So simply you need to identify most interesting topic in that particular broad area. So that is why we call it as narrow downing the area. So if the selected broad area is finance, and you need to determine what is the most interesting topic that you have learned in there. Could be shareholder value and corporate governance, could be dividend policy, could be financial markets, could be portfolio theory and asset pricing, could be derivatives. Likewise, you need to identify the uh, subtopics. So simply you need to narrow down that particular area. So if you look at the financial accounting aspect, so these are some of the other subtopics: financial reporting and standards, earnings management. So here, management accounting also several top subtopics have been mentioned. In the auditing also several subtopics have been mentioned, as well as tax and forensic. So that is the step number 2, where you need to narrow down your broad area. So the third one is conduct a literature review. So simply you need to do a small reading related with the particular narrowed down area. So that is basically to identify the current trends or the gaps relevant to that particular topic. So simply you need to bring the current debate of the topic, and to identify the commonly used methodologies in the previous researches to sort out the issues, or to sort out the objectives, and still there are any unanswered questions or contradictions in the existing literature. So to identify these things, you need to do a small reading. In a bigger way, we call it as a literature review, but at the earlier stage, so better you do a small reading to identify this. So here you can see now, if your preferred area is finance, these are the topics. So I have earlier discussed the finance aspect as well. So let me move on to this financial accounting field. Now, if your broad area is financial accounting, and once you narrow down that broad area into different topics that you have learned under your undergraduate or the postgraduate level, right? So these are some of the summarized topics as an example you could consider. So here you can see the financial reporting and standards. So you can read some of the articles from reputed journals as well as some of the reports provided by several audit firms, right? To identify about the current trends and what are the solutions, what are the unanswered questions or contradictory arguments with regard to this particular topic, unsolved issues, if I put it in a very simple way. So you need to read to identify some sort of a current trends, current debates, or unsolved questions or areas related to this particular subtopic. So the same thing happens to other topics as well in other broad areas if you have preferred those areas. So then the fourth step is you need to identify a research problem or the question. So simply you need to identify what is happening at the moment with regard to that current topic and why it is happening. How does it happen? And what if we change something? So likewise, you need to bring certain questions. Now here you can see some of the quantitative as well as qualitative type of questions are there, but forget it. So simply you need to prepare or come up with several questions related to that particular area. Now here I have indicated that if you have selected your broad area as finance, and once you have narrowed down it to a particular subtopic, let's say sustainable finance, right? So you need to come up with some sort of a questions or the objectives related to that particular topic. For an example, the impact of sustainable finance or the impact of ESG practices on firm value. Likewise, so what is the impact of ESG practices on firm value? So that it is kind of a question that you have brought based on the readings that you have done in your earlier step. So that's why I have illustrated or I have said to you, you need to do a reading, right? So to identify the current debate, current arguments, current issues with regard to this particular topic. So likewise, you can bring a particular question like what is the impact of ESG practices on firm value? Evidence from manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. So likewise, you can bring the research question by doing a particular literature review. And the other one is you need to check the feasibility, which means you need to check whether the data is available, because you can come up with many wonderful research topics, but if you don't have the data, you cannot conduct your research. And also you need to determine whether the given time framework is sufficient for you to do that research or for you to get that data, as well as the skills are there with you and what are the tools that you need to analyze the objectives or the results. And then you need to define the scope and the objectives, right? So that is again based on the data availability, time framework, and the skills and the tools that you have. So you need to determine whether the things are satisfied, then you can come up with your objectives. So you could remember that earlier we discussed that once you do a literature review, you can come up with a question. The question was, which we have discussed, what is the impact of ESG practices on firm value? Evidence from listed manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. So simply you can convert that one into an objective by simply bringing the term to in front of that question. So it is simply to identify or to examine the impact of ESG practices on firm value of listed manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. So that is the sixth step in the journey of identifying your research topic. So the seventh topic, the seventh step is to validate the research. You can validate your research. So once you come up with a particular topic or a statement, let's say, you can discuss it with your research supervisors to bring more value addition to your research topic, as well as both of you can discuss whether it is further researchable, as well as whether it is giving certain value addition to the academic and the practice, because we are doing research to give contribution. And the meantime, you need to consider about your research topic consists with three things. You need to consider whether that is there. That is, your research topic should reflect your dependent variable, independent variable or independent variables, and your sample. So hope you remember that in this discussion, we had a question based on the literature that I have discussed with you. That is, what is the impact of ESG practices on firm value? Evidence from listed manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. So we can convert that one into a research topic. How? Simply, the research topic is the impact of ESG practices on firm value, evidence from listed manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. Right. So the research question was, what is the impact of ESG practices on firm value? Evidence from manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. Then we have converted that one into a research topic. The topic is the impact of ESG practices on firm value, evidence from listed manufacturing companies in Sri Lanka. So you can see there the dependent variable is there, that is your firm value. Independent variable is there, that is the ESG practices, and the sample is there, that is listed manufacturing companies. So this is how you can build up your research topic based on these 7 steps. So it's pretty easy. So hope you understood the things. So if you're fine with the things, you can like and subscribe. Thank you.